With practice and qualifying in the books, it's time to get you set for the Toyota Owners 400 this
Toyota
week
owner right here.
at Richmond.
Ross Chastain used the wall all the way around this racetrack.
Logano has been the class of the field.
Check out the big brain on Brad.
Yeah, I need to change my underwear.
Brian Twining, practice is done, qualifying's over. We know the running order. We know the salaries are on DraftKings. Shout out to Caesars for updating the outright odds so we can talk about that too. We'll have some decisions to make. Obviously, we had two groups today. Group A had a significant advantage in terms of speed. Group B was obviously slower. So there was, people who showed up from each of those groups. We'll have to figure out how much we want to take from it. Also, this race is going to be like 7 o'clock East Coast time, and they had qualifying Saturday morning. I mean, obviously for us West Coasters, it's great because we're able to get everything recorded before.
Oh yeah, fantastic.
Written. Make sure you subscribe to the newsletter, aoppodcast.substack.com. Link in the description. We'll have more picks and bets and all that stuff up there. But yeah, I guess where is your head at in terms of what we've seen so far and how you're going to apply that to Sunday's race with the time change, with the, do we get more sun? Do we get less sun? Like how where's your head at?
So just starting off, like, I think you have to recognize the fact that it was still fairly early there when they started practicing qualifying. So it was, it was still cooler temperatures, probably around the same temperatures that it's going to be when they start the race tomorrow. That being said, the sun did start to peek through the clouds. You saw that during the second portion of qualifying, the second round of qualifying, and they were mentioning that on the broadcast that the guys who were in Group B, they started to see slower speeds because the sun was coming out and loosening up the track. And so, I really am kind of perplexed about how we're going to go about looking at this stuff because of the differences in practice speeds. I mean, like we said, Group A came out like a ball of fire, and then Group B was 4 to 5 tenths slower in the fastest single lap times during practice. And then it completely flipped on its head during qualifying, with Group A being extremely slow, and then Group B throttling everybody and blasting past everybody in Group A. So, you're kind of nitpicking in terms of what you're going to look at. You have guys like Ross Chastain, who were the slowest car during practice, and Christopher Bell, who looked fine during his practice session and then got loose during lap 1 of his qualifying run. And now he's starting, outside the top 20, which is a huge surprise to everybody. So it's going to be really interesting to look at this. I think we have to go back and look at past history at this track and then know that we're probably going to get long runs here, just like we saw at the end of the Xfinity race. So again, you're going to have those old farts who are just really good at tire management finding their way towards the front, I think.
Yeah, no, it definitely seems like the smart money is on the better drivers, the older drivers, the guys that have done this before. Just pulling up fantasy points from Richmond last year just to get an idea of where people start, where people finish, and how that kind of impacts everything. Obviously, if you can get to the front from the back, obviously great. We'll have some Dominator thoughts. We'll have all those thoughts, but let's dive into it. We can kind of run driver by driver like we always do, and then we'll build a couple lineups and then recap the outright card and figure out if we want to add anything else, because the lines have moved pretty significantly, and talk about what that means and how we're going to update everything accordingly. So let me do this and we will take a look. We'll go all the way down to 10K. So we have Denny Hamlin starting 11th, 11-2. Christopher Bell, as you mentioned, starting 29th at 11K. Martin Truex, you're now race favorite at the betting window, 10-8. William Byron starting 13th at 10-5. Kyle Larson put it on the pole at 10-2. And Tyrone Gibbs starting inside the top 10 yet again at an even 10K. We have some front runners. We have some back markers. We have some mid-pack options. A lot to dive into here. Where is your head at? And who is most appealing as we look initially?
It's got to be Denny Hamlin. I mean, he's starting just outside the top 10. This guy is known for being the, if not the best, one of the top couple drivers at Richmond. And so starting outside the top 10, knowing you're probably going to get those placement points and acknowledging the fact that he's led a ton of laps in every single trip here, it's got to be him. I know Christopher Bell is going to warrant a ton of roster percentage, which might actually keep Hamlin's a little bit lower than what it should be. And so I gotta go with Hamlin. And then how do you not love Martin Truex Jr.? I mean, he's a race favorite for a reason. He's not starting on the front row, but that's never mattered to him at this track. I mean, he's never really qualified that well. Seventh, yeah, not that well. But yeah, I fully expect the normal dudes to be running up front at the end here.
Yeah, no, I think that makes sense. I think I'm in on Bell. I think, we'll see if I can push us into a weird direction, but potentially grabbing two of these guys might make things really hard. But if it
Yeah.
makes it really compelling, and because the guys that lead a ton of laps are obviously going to be really important, and then the guys that can move forward a significant amount of spots is going to be really important. So that screams Kyle Larson, Ty Gibbs, Martin Truex as guys in the front, and then Bell and even Byron to some extent as guys who can move forward and really contend for a win. We'll dive into the 9K. We have Kyle Busch starting 15th at 9.7. Ryan Blaney, who was the best car in Group A, starting 12th at 9.5. Buescher starting 14th at 9.3. And Chase Elliott, average ass Chase Elliott, has track position to start.
Yeah.
Can he maintain it and find a way to finish?
There is no way in hell, after being on Chase Elliott the last couple of weeks, am I going to go back to the well. He's in a prove it or lose it mode for me at the betting window. Like, there's no way I can back him until I see him return to any sort of competitive form.
Yeah, I agree. And that means he's going to win the damn race and be the target on DraftKings.
Yeah, you're not kidding. And what's crazy is, like, I think it's extremely important too to acknowledge that you need guys that are going to lead a shitload of laps here. I mean, even like when you go back to 2022, the spring race that Denny Hamlin won, he only led 5 laps during that race after starting 13th, which is right around where he's starting this race. But there were 2 other guys that led over 100 laps, and they finished outside the front 2. So it was William Byron and Ryan Blaney who led 122 and 128 laps respectively during that race. So, even if they don't win, you need the guys that are going to lead a ton of these laps, because 400 laps here opens up a lot of opportunity for dominator points, even if they don't wind up winning the race.
Yeah. I'm looking. It's really interesting. So not only do you want the guys that lead laps, but they have to really do well. Like, even I'm looking at Richmond 1 from last year. Byron led the most laps at 117, but finished 24th. So it ended up costing him, and he ended up having a fine day. So you really need him to do well, lead laps, and stay up there. Because Martin Truex only led 56 laps, but had 21 fastest laps and ended up finishing at 11th when he started 12th. So, figuring out how you want to kind of approach that, I think is definitely interesting. I like this range a lot. I guess, obviously Group A was fast, but Blaney looked really good, maintained the speed, obviously slowed down a little bit, but then was able to be the fastest car on a 30-lap run, which, 29 cars basically did. So that's impressive. Are you in on him, or is this because I don't know? I feel like I looked at some stuff and he seemed compelling, and then the way the Fords have been going in general, it's like I don't know if I want to get there.
So interesting that you mentioned that, because one thing we did notice at Phoenix was the later into the runs that we got, the Fords actually started to appear, and it was the guys that we expected. I know I give Chris Buescher and Brad Keselowski shit for kind of lucking into finishing results that they probably didn't deserve, but they were still near there. Like, they were running top 10 because of their long run speed. And Ryan Blaney's similar type of scenario, where he was right near the top 5 in that race. And, for what it's worth, out of the Penske garage, Blaney's the best guy at these tracks right now. And he is the class of that 3-car team. And so Blaney might get kind of glanced over because you do have Denny starting 11th. You have Kyle Larson starting on the pole, and you have Christopher Bell, who's going to warrant a ton of roster percentage, who's starting almost 30th. So I think Blaney is somebody to keep in mind that could, over the long run, find himself up front like he did in 2022 and lead a shitload of laps and finish, say, 6th or 7th and still get you home as part of, a cashing lineup.
Yeah, and if you want to be a little different this week, going with the Fords might be the move. Obviously, Buescher won here last year, led 88 laps, was the guy you needed, ended up scoring 20 plus more points than any other driver. Right behind him was RFK teammate Brad Keselowski, who I'm sure we'll talk about here in a minute. But yeah, Buescher's really compelling, starting 14th. He could absolutely win this race if you trust the Fords. I think there could be some opportunity there. What about Red Dog? Obviously, some optimism about him. We like the Toyotas. Interesting spot. Obviously, didn't qualify strong, but looked pretty decent in practice.
Yeah, I think Reddick is he might be the overlooked. Yeah. Well, I feel like the guy below him is probably the most overlooked one. But when you look at Reddick's practice numbers, yeah, he wasn't the fastest, but his fall off, like, splits were pretty damn good. We're talking under three quarters of a tenth, so he wasn't losing a ton of time in his 5-lap splits. And over the long runs that we're used to seeing here in Richmond, like, that could be massive for him making his way through the field and making up track position early in the race that could give him that track position late, that with a few adjustments, we all know how fast the Toyotas have been. Like, he could find himself competing for a win, and it would not surprise me here. And he's probably going to go again overlooked this week because of all the other dudes and where they're starting.
Yeah, no, it's definitely an interesting range. And depending on what you do, you might not, if you get expensive up here, you might have to just skip the 9K range completely. So that may drive his ownership way down. Beyond Reddick, we have Ross Chastain, we have Joey Logano, Brad Keselowski, and Alex Bowman. Bowman and Chastain both starting in the top 5, both interesting as potential second dominators if you think they can get there, stay there, and lead laps. And I know you aren't quite as optimistic about Logano, but I do love me some Logano, especially at the pre-practice number. If you could get it north of 20, like 25 or better, there was some 30 out there. That's a great number. Obviously, those are long gone. And then Brad K. We were talking about Buescher, and I think Keselowski is really solid. Obviously, there was some early optimism about him and what he could do this week, starting 23rd at 8,200. I think he makes some sense. So I guess, are you in on Chastain or Bowman as potential early front runners? And then we'll talk about Keselowski and Logano.
So I'm a little scared off by Chastain's practice. I know he didn't fire off at the same time as everybody else, and that seemed to really hurt him because his first couple of laps were extremely slow, and that tanked his lap averages during practice. So it's hard to get a good gauge over what type of speed he has. Alex Bowman looked incredible. I don't mind going there. Logano, look, how many times are we going to do this with him where he fires off with incredible speed, practice, qualifying, blah, 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 and then he sinks like a friggin' rock during the race? The guy in this range that I'm really intrigued about is Brad Keselowski, because in Group B, he had some of the best fall off numbers in his 5-lap splits. And then during qualifying, for some damn reason, he decided to run just one lap thinking that his 22.45 was going to get him into the second round, which was not even close to fast enough. And had he run another lap, he's probably starting 15th, 14th, 9 different spots, because he's closer to a top 10 car than he is a 20 to 25th place car. So Keselowski for me in this range is probably my favorite, especially knowing we're going to get those long green flag runs where tire management is going to come into play. And we saw what happened at Bristol when that did play out like that. So it's Keselowski or bust in this range for me right now.
Yeah, I'm in on Keselowski. I think I might be in on Bowman depending on what you do early. If you want to do like Bell and Byron or Bell and like Blaney or even Bell and then Busher and then Keselowski, I think that could be an interesting way. And then grab Bowman. Um, I'm not in on Chastain. We talk about him a lot, but you know, at places where he tends to qualify well, for some reason he just sinks like a rock and is a non-factor all day. And maybe it's like just randomness and luck. Just happened to
Yeah.
see it, but I think it is interesting.
Yeah, and real quick, one note on Alex Bowman: the last 3 spring races we've had here, he hasn't finished worse than 8th.
Yeah.
So I mean, he's a top 10 guy in the spring at Richmond with great starting track position, and yeah, I don't mind sneaking him in a lineup as a potential sneaky dominator play.
Yep, I like it. I like it a lot. And even with if you want to do a Hamlin Bell thing and then put him in there, I think that could be fun.
Yeah.
We might just have to do that. Let's talk 7K. Bubba Wallace starting 5th. Chase Briscoe starting 32nd. Josh Berry starting 30th. Daniel Suarez starting 20th. And Noah Gragson starting 17th. And old McDriver 31. Interesting group. I think there's some definitely values
Yep.
there. Barry jumps out for me. I can never turn down a Briscoe, but who's the most interesting to you?
It's really hard, but I mean, if you're going to get different, not a lot of people are going to want to put him in a lineup from where he's starting, but Bubba Wallace starting 5th at 7,700, I think could be one of those like Ty Gibbs type plays that we saw from Phoenix a couple of weeks ago, where you get the leverage play of Bubba because people don't want to play him when he's starting up front because they know he's very mistake prone. But his car was fast in Group B. Like, he was the fastest guy in that group, and all the longer splits, 20, 25, 30 lap splits in his group in practice. And for all the talk about Toyota, like, you cannot just glance over the fact that he's never had the tremendous amount of success here in terms of finishing results, but he has ran up front. I believe he led 80 or so laps here before. So I think Bubba is a sneaky little play. And then Michael McDowell starting 31st. He had, again, decent splits, second fastest guy in terms of lap averages in Group B. I'm not too worried about single lap speed and qualifying. I mean, if you heard Kevin Harvick talk about it, he was never worried about that at this track. So I think those 2 guys are probably my favorite in this range, but
I think Bubba, go ahead.
I was just going to say the guy for me that cannot wait to find odds on at the sports books is Noah Gragson and fade the shit out of him, because I have zero faith that he's going to be able to keep the tires on it.
Let's talk Bubba, because I think that's an interesting shout, especially when we just talked about Bowman as a potential early dominator. Bubba starting 1 spot further back. He is $300 cheaper. His projection is pretty similar, and he's going to come at a tenth, like a third of the ownership. Yep. So if you're getting pretty chalky elsewhere in tournaments and you want to do the Bubba thing instead of Bowman, especially if you like the Toyotas a lot, I think that is a really good call and something that you could get yourself to. As I mentioned, I really like Barry and Briscoe. I think both of them make sense. Maybe not both of them in the same lineup, but you probably want to have some exposure. And I'm with you on fading Grags, and he's just not interesting. I'm in on McDowell though. Let's talk 6K, because I think there's a lot of names to discuss there. Austin Dillon starting 22nd, Eric Jones 27th, Ryan Preece 16th, John Hunter starting 18th. Speaking of guys who want to fade the shit out of, Austin Cindric starting 9th, and Richard Stenhouse Jr. starting 24th. The 6K range has names. Is there any that you actually want to pound the table for?
I liked Ryan Preece entering the week. I'm a little weary of that starting position of 16th, but I do think that, if people are on the SHR camp for the long run in terms of Josh Berry and Chase Briscoe, I mean, Ryan Preece can probably just as likely keep it in that same position and maybe even potentially steal a top 10 if things fall his way late in the race. So I like him. I'm not going with Austin Dillon because that team has been trash. And then Eric Jones, I just don't see him being able to make his way through the field without wrecking his tires. And then
Yeah.
Austin Cindric is a lock of the century fade play this week too.
Yeah, honestly, I think I'd rather just dive into sub 6K and take my shot because I don't think there's that much of a difference, and it opens
Right.
up so much more of the player pool. So we have Hocevar 25th, LaJoy 21st, Zane Smith 28th, Todd Gilliland starting 6th. No, thank you. Ty Dillon, Justin Haley, Harrison Burton, Kaz Gralla, and Daniel Hemrick. I mean, it's not a sexy group, but Hocevar, I mean, Wormy talks about his speed every single week, is interesting, starting 25th. I could find myself Haley. I don't hate. I know it's a
I was
Rick
just
Ware
going to say,
car.
Justin Haley is a smash play at this spot and price.
Yeah.
He had the unlucky honor of going out first in qualifying, which you saw that the first couple of guys that ran when they started qualifying were slow as shit. And his speeds during it were not indicative of the type of run that he had during practice. So
Yeah.
I
mean,
think Haley is going to be a fine play. He's probably a better, more competitive top 20 car than he is of, running near the back markers. So he's going to be a smash at just $5,300. I love Haley.
Yeah, I think he's a great call. He was like a top 10-ish car, and I know he was in Group A,
Yeah.
so it's easy to do. But he was right behind Josh Berry. He was in front of John Hunter Nemechek, Austin Dillon, Ryan Preece, Briscoe, Suarez, Zane Smith, and Hemrick. So, and in terms of price, he's only in front of Hemrick and Burton and Gralla. So, I think I'm with you there. I think he makes sense, and then I think Hocevar also makes some sense if you need to save salary. So. We're going to build 3 lineups. I'm going to lead us off with a little bit of a force into a certain direction.
All right,
see
Bubba
what
Wallace.
we can do.
Nope. Oh, damn. And then now add Bubba. I love this lineup already. Now you can get funky with it.
So we have Justin
Barry or
Haley starting
Briscoe.
36, Hamlin and Bell, both 11K guys, and then Bubba starting 5th. So we need 2 drivers. We have 7,400 left. We could come down and grab like a Hocevar or
No, because I think at that point you're then punting that position where I think this week. So say you put Alex Bowman in this lineup.
So let me do something really quick. So if we do Hocevar, we have almost 9K, or we have 7,400, and we can get a little more. Like we could do a McDowell thing with so if we do Bowman, we have 6,800. That puts us into that. Yes.
Yeah, that kind of puts us into.
But we could do like a McDriver and
a Barry or a Briscoe. I think that's much better than going with Hocevar.
Yeah, I agree. Or we could do Barry. We could even do Suarez or McDowell or Ryan Preece, which I actually don't hate.
Man.
Because we have Barry starting 30th, Bell, obviously we expect to move significantly forward, and then Haley. So it might be good to grab like a Preece who's starting 16th, or McDriver, I think is the other option.
Yeah, I think we go with all like back markers here because I fully expect McDowell and Barry. Obviously, Christopher Bell does not count in this conversation because he's going to find his way near the front. But Barry and McDowell, I fully expect to see them running near the top 15 or so.
So Hamlin, Bell, Bubba, Barry, McDowell, and Haley is our first lineup. Let's create another one, and I'll let you grab the reins to start this one. You can put one guy in, you can put a couple guys in, and you can force us into uncomfortable positions, however you want to do it.
All right, let's get weird. Let's go. Let's start this one off with Ryan Blaney.
I know you were going to go there.
And then you're going to go to Reddick?
No, I'm going to RFK it.
All right. Okay, give us Alex Bowman then.
Okay.
Yeah, I think in terms of roster construction, I think that gives us a guy up at the front and then a couple of dudes that can get there later, for sure.
And that gives us 8,100 for the final 3 spots.
And then who did we not grab? Oh, I think this is a good lineup to put maybe Hocevar.
Okay. And that gives us 9,200.
Because now you can get like a Reddick.
Kind of
Or you-
tempted to do Byron, but also Busher's right there starting 14th. We both like him a lot.
All
We
right.
put him in, that gives us
And Reddick.
a Reddick.
I have no interest in Chase Elliott. Absolutely not.
Yeah, and I have no interest in Chastain. The only other name I would consider here is Logano. I know you don't like him, but
Nope.
in this lineup,
The thing is when is the last time we've seen 2 Penske cars run well on a non-super speedway track?
almost never.
Exactly.
These
So it's either
lineups are
one or
coming
the other.
together way too easily, so they're surely going to have a bad day. All right. So we did Hamlin Bell. We did the Blaney thing. Do you want to build a Truex lineup? Do you
Yeah, I
want to
think it'd
build
be
a Larson
a
Byron lineup?
grave mistake if we didn't include Marty.
Okay. Do you
At
want to
least
include
once.
Bell, who's starting 29th, and we really like the Toyotas? Or do you want to do something else? Do you want to do a Hamlin here and hope they're the 2 cars you need?
I mean, shit. I do not doubt that both of them will be up front. I can envision a world where both of these guys are leading the majority of the laps.
Huh. Let's start that way. I think we do Burton again. No, Haley.
All right.
5,300. We did Barry. Should we do Briscoe?
Yeah, I think I don't want to get too exposed to these guys. So, all right.
So once again, we're in this position where we could come down here, do like Hocevar or Zane Smith or something, and then go back up, or we can do a couple guys around here, like even if we do Barry as well and McDowell. I know it's similar, but I'm not going to force drivers I don't like into a lineup.
Yeah.
We could do Ryan Preece here, who's 65, and that gives us 8,600. And we could do Keselowski, or
I'm not liking this lineup as much.
no, which means it's going to be our best for sure.
Right. I mean, this if just because of the way that we're talking there, this would be the lineup that you would have Logano, and Logano winds up winning the damn thing because he's unmovable.
I love it. Let's do it. So we could do Ryan Preece. We could do John Hunter. We could do Stenhouse. We could do Hocevar.
What about Stenhouse? He wasn't that bad in practice.
I could do Stenhouse.
Like,
he's Ricky
nobody's
Stenhouse,
going to put him in a lineup.
We're also doing tournaments. I don't know. He's fine at 6K.
I mean, he's probably going to be the first guy that wrecks out.
Yeah, almost assuredly. But let's do it.
Oh, gross.
I know. That means it's a good lineup. So we have our 3 lineups: Hamlin, Bell, Bubba, Barry, McDowell, and Haley, Blaney, Busher, Reddick, Keselowski, Bowman, Hocevar, Hamlin, Truex, Logano, Briscoe, Stenhouse, and Haley. So I will pull up the actually go to lobby. I'm going to enter these while we're sitting here, that way I don't forget. Here's the 3 max. Actually, it's so much easier to do this on your phone.
Really?
Yeah. Okay, we're good. Let's talk outright. So, as I mentioned, our Substack will be uploaded at first thing in the morning. Make sure if you go subscribe now, it'll be in your inbox Sunday morning. or you can, obviously go back and check out anyone on aoppodcast.substack.com. But if you can subscribe, if you're enjoying it at all, we do appreciate it. If you want to see other stuff, if there's a way we can, upgrade it or tweak it or improve it to make it a little stronger. Definitely open to ideas. It's something that we're kind of workshopping and figuring out how it can best support you. If you haven't subscribed to the YouTube channel, please consider doing that. We're working to get to 1,000 subs. We'd like to be there by All-Star break, and we can do a cool giveaway. We're still TBD on what that would be, but if we get to 1,000, we'll figure out something awesome to give away. Smash the like button. Let us know down in the comments, who is your favorite driver, say sub 8,500. You could do 8,700 if you want to include Reddick, but somewhere between say below 9K. That's fine.
Below 9K, I think.
Anything there, just let us know what you're thinking, and then if there's any outrights that you're excited about, and always feel free to ask questions, drop thoughts. We're always trying to loop back between now and race day to answer any of those, give you our thoughts, and obviously reach out to us on Twitter. We're always down to chat there as well. So as I mentioned, Truex is now your favorite, plus 450. Brian, we talked about him as somebody we both liked. He was plus 650 on the board when we talked on Tuesday. Get him as long as 7. We both kind of agreed, let's see what he does in practice. Even if this number moves a little bit, maybe it's 4.5 or 5, and we jump in. But he qualified fine. He's in the top 10.
But that's what he does.
He was in the second group, so obviously the speed wasn't hard. But I'm trying to understand. Maybe it's just optimism, because we were even in the chat of the NASCAR betting preview. There seemed to be a lot of Truex optimism.
Yeah.
So I'm wondering if it's just the optimism and kind of gravity pulling him up, or if they're just really impressed with what he did in practice, despite being in that second group. Obviously wasn't the fastest. He was behind McDowell. He was behind Bubba. He was behind Byron, Gilliland, Gregson, Bell. So I don't know. Am I just going to, I loved him coming into the week. I don't want to be out on him, but I also don't want to just not. I don't want to not bet him. So how do I
I'm not touching 4.5 right now, because he wasn't that impressive in practice and qualifying. Now,
cool.
Well, no. So I think there's definitely a possibility that this number gets longer during the race, because say he doesn't have the short run speed and he drops back from 7th to 10th or 11th, pretty quickly, and then he starts to make his way through the field. I think that's when you could probably jump on it and get it back at 6 or 6.5. Whereas, honestly, a guy like Denny, who opened the week at he was 4.5, I believe, or 5, 6.5. I don't mind that at all for Denny.
And Caesars does have a 6-1 boost on Truex. So if you want Truex and you have access to Caesars, it's certainly a way to do it. I don't think I want to bet him for top Toyota, just because we think Bell and Gibbs and Reddick and Denny all have really good shots to win. So he could get third and still not be the top Toyota, or even the second. So it's figuring out how to bet him is going to be a little bit of a challenge. Maybe just look for matchups. I don't know. We have Bell right behind him, plus 550. Kyle Larson, plus 575. Denny Hamlin, 6.5, are all inside 10-1. Do you have interest in anyone named Bell, Larson, or Hamlin?
Like I said, I like the Denny number. I'm going to shop it, because I'll probably add Denny on an outright, depending on if I could get it at 7. That's kind of preferable, but there's not a lot of books that have odds out right now. I know Denny is 6 over at BetMGM, and then Superbook, I believe he's 7 at Superbook. All right, so I'm going to add that. Okay. Denny Hamlin, 7-1, Superbook. That is being added to my card. Practice doesn't scare me with him. We saw him. He doesn't. Some of these guys just do not give shit about practice or qualifying at tracks that they clearly have. They know better than themselves. So
yeah,
Denny's fine. Gibbs, I don't know. There's some worry about the long run stuff and maybe a repeat of what we saw at Bristol where he just burns his stuff too fast. And it's still farts that pass him, but that car is fast on the short run. So,
and just so people know, if they weren't watching earlier in the week, you should be watching. You're adding that for me, Brian. That's wrong column.
Oh,
if you weren't watching earlier in the week, you should be joining us for our betting preview to get the best of the numbers. But I got Byron at 12. You can obviously get a better number now. I got Logano at 25. Very happy to have that. And Logano top 4 plus 550. But Brian has Byron. He took McDriver over Briscoe in qualifying, which ended up working out barely, but it worked. Chastain over average ass Chase Elliott in the race. Chastain top Chevy, holding those two tickets does not suck. And then he's adding Hamlin 7-1. So yeah, I think Denny makes sense. I think if you can get him at 7-1 or better, I think it's a good pull there. Let's talk about the next range. Ty Gibbs 10-1, Brad K 10-1, Chris Buescher 10-1, Logano's now 14.
no shot.
Byron's 15. I'm interested in potentially doubling there. I don't know. Blaney is 15. Like Bowman's now 18. He was like 35, which is interesting.
Yeah.
I guess of the guys that are inside that 20-1 number, between 10 and 20, any interest there?
Ryan Blaney at 15-1, people? Like, what?
I don't hate that. At all.
He was fast as shit during practice. And he just missed out of a top 10 qualifying spot by like 1,000th of a second. So, you cannot take too much out of where this dude is starting. I mean,
I have Logano stuff, and I know when Logano sucks ass, Blaney does well. And I'm sure Logano is going to suck ass. So I'm going to take Blaney at 15-1 to win the race. I got to figure out my supplemental bets. I have 3 outrights on a top 4 right now. That's crazy.
Okay. This is also being added to the card. Ryan Blaney is 20-1 at BetMGM and Superbook. So,
well, I'm adding that then.
Yeah, so those are going. One of those, let's do Superbook, is going on the card.
All right, I'll add it at BetMGM so we can diversify.
Oh, I'll do BetMGM as well because I already have 2.
No, don't screw me up.
Diversify my money. This is what I do in Vegas. I actually, little on down, like I got my wife in Vegas who has all my apps and she's placing my bets for me, but it's all dispersed over multiple books.
That's how you do it, though. You get the best of the number everywhere.
That's right.
Reddick is 22. That's kind of interesting. Average ass is 22.
How highly they think of Chase Elliott.
Yeah. Like
he was trash in practice, though.
Josh Berry at 50?
No. Dude, look at Kyle Busch.
Look at Kyle Busch. He sucks ass.
How far has he fallen in terms of just the expectations?
You think he's disappointed he went to RCR?
Honestly, I almost feel like there's some sort of agreement there where he's going to get like an ownership stake in RCR, because for him to be putting up with the type of pit road shit that he has at this stage of his career and still not just absolutely flipping the F out on a week-to-week basis is pretty impressive.
We're going to have RFK and RCK. Roush Fenwick, Keselowski, and Richard Childress, Kyle. I guess it would be RCK. Yeah, no, and JGR is doing backflips because they got rid of the freaking Kyle Busch, who was trying to fight Christopher Bell, and they got Ty Gibbs, who's been like arguably the best driver through
right
the first 6 weeks of the season. So upgrade.
Yeah. The outright market is really interesting right now because like a guy like Brad Keselowski, for instance, he's starting outside the top 20. I'm not going to bet that at 10-1 because what if he doesn't move early? Like, what if his short run speed sucks in the same breath as I talked about Martin Truex Jr. and he falls back to say 25th, 26th, and then he starts to come on? You're probably getting this at 14-1, knowing it. Like the guy who has clean air up front is going to jump out to a 1 second lead fairly quickly, and so
for sure.
Obviously, that's going to elongate everybody else's numbers. So why bet Keselowski now with all that track position he's got to make up? It doesn't make sense to me.
No reason. It really is interesting though, because it seems like some weeks there's like no value in the outright market. Other weeks there's
Yeah.
opportunity. I feel like this is one of those weeks. Like Byron, Blaney, Bubba, even Bowman and Chastain to a lesser degree, Tyler Reddick. I think they all have. You can make cases. Even Chase Elliott. Like we don't like him obviously, but like if you want to make a case for him, like I think it's pretty not that hard to do. Even if we're the ones that aren't going to be making that decision. Okay, so I have Byron, Logano, and Blaney outrights at 12, 25, and 20 respectively. Have Logano for a top Ford. I will surely be adding some top 10s, some manufacturer props, making this thing absurdly long and
You're riding that alone, my friend,
pushing
with
the money
Joey.
around the table. Brian has Byron, Hamlin, and Blaney, along with Chastain for top Chevy and against Chase Elliott, and then has the McDriver, which he already hit. So we will be adding bets to the betting card. So make sure you are checking out our Substack. It's completely free. You can subscribe while you're there. It takes you 2 seconds, saves us a lifetime, and helps us a lot. That's Brian Twining. I'm Kyle Robert. Enjoy the race. Let's hit some winners. Let's cash on DraftKings, and we'll talk to you next time.